Hi everyone, and welcome to season 2 of In Conversation with Saepio. I'm the host, Amir Nooriala. We are going to be kicking off season 2 with a great episode. We are starting with the CEO of Mimecast, Marc van Zadelhoff. This is a company with over 42,000 customers. They are securing over 25 million end users and coming up to $1 billion in revenue. And as you can see from the surroundings, are profitable as well. So great first episode. And for the rest of season 2, we're going to have some heavy hitting CEOs as well. So please tune in. You're going to love this chat. So with that in mind, I just want to say hello to Marc. Marc, thank you so much for making the time.
Great to see you.
I appreciate you also for hosting us in such a brilliant venue.
Anytime.
Usually, Marc, when we do these conversations, at the start, I will slightly embarrass you by talking about you in front of the camera. And then I'll embarrass you a bit more by talking about the company you represent in front of the camera, and then we can have a conversation. So you okay with me doing that?
Off you go. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. And for those of you who don't know Marc, and shame on you, Marc's now been the CEO of Mimecast for 2 years, or just over 2 years?
2 years last week.
2 years last week. Congratulations. And this is not Marc's first CEO role. He was previously the CEO of Devo, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we go through your career. But you've also been running IBM security division as well. So fair-time CEO, definitely very, very accomplished in that respect. And I don't think anyone can tell from your accent, but you have a Dutch background.
I do.
Born and raised in Holland, or?
I lived 13 years in the Netherlands. I was born there, lived there 13 years. It's a long story.
It's a long story.
My mother's from Argentina. My dad's from the Netherlands. It's
right. Okay.
It's
well, let's see as we ask questions if the accent's going to come out or not. But you started your career there, consulting, MBA. We mentioned earlier when we were talking beforehand, you were a VC as well for a while. You moved from the Netherlands to the US, joined a startup. That startup got bought by IBM. You ended up staying for 12 years at IBM, worked your way up to being the CEO of the security division for the last 3 years of that period. Did I summarize that correctly?
That's great.
Perfect. See, a little bit of prep. I do prep. And in terms of Mimecast, there's some incredible numbers I'm going to just run through the audience. Actually, you should correct me here if I get anything wrong. When I did my research, it said you've got over 42,000 customers in more than 100 countries. And those customers are leading you to securing 26 million end users. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So that's huge. In terms of scale, I'll be surprised if anyone watching this has not heard of Mimecast or used Mimecast or is currently using Mimecast. So absolute behemoth in this space. In Q4, your infrastructure processed 1.5 billion emails a day.
Yeah.
At a run rate, okay. And in terms of archive queries, obviously Mimecast is very famous for its archiving 2.7 million archive queries a week. And then there's a stat I've been given. I don't know if this is a good stat or a bad stat, but it's kind of scary to me. In January of 24, that was your record month, and Mimecast blocked 250 million attacks in 1 month.
Yeah.
So something went wrong in the world in Jan 24.
Yeah, that happens.
But you prevented it. And in terms of size, this is one of the things people always are interested in. And I don't know how much you can disclose, but according to the research I could find, last year you were around 850 million in terms of revenue. Does that sound right to you?
We're approaching $1 billion in revenue.
Approaching $1 billion. So there are very, very few cybersecurity companies that ever get close to that $1 billion mark. So that's a huge mark as well. So congratulations on that.
Yeah.
So apologies. I've just spoken about you. I've spoken about where you work. Are you okay for me to dive into the questions?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. I mentioned in the intro that you were the CEO of Devo. For those who don't know Devo, this is what do you call it? A startup? A scale up? How would you
scale up?
A scale up.
A scale up.
So scale up, you raised over 300 million. You were CEO there. You tripled the ARR, right? That sounds like a great CEO job, right? You've raised a load of money. You've massively grown the top line of that business. And then Mimecast somehow convinced you to come over and be CEO here. So I guess the first question I think everyone should be wondering is, what made you even have that conversation, let alone take the jump?
Yes, man, there's a lot to unpack there. But first of all, Devo, it was my third time in the SIEM space, security analytics. In fact, I could go on and on about this. The startup in the Netherlands that I was with that we sold to IBM, we would send a CD-ROM with software that was logging and security information and event management, and you would put it into your server and install it.
Right.
And then when I got to IBM and we formed IBM Security's business, the Formation Act was the acquisition of Q1 Labs, QRadar.
Right.
And we turned that from 660 million to $500 million in SIM revenue,
right, as
part of the $2.5 billion business that we built at IBM Security.
Amazing.
I wish it was a separate stock ticker. That would have been even more fun. It was a really fun run there. Like you said, almost 12 years. And then, I did another role after IBM and got, and that we sold that company. It was LogMeIn. We sold that to Francisco Partners, and that freed me up. And then I joined Devo. And I think the thought I had when I joined Devo was, let's go to a smaller company. I know the space really well. And now instead of the CD-ROM or the appliances, which QRadar did, this is now from the cloud, right? So I was following every generation of the SIM space.
Smart man.
Sometimes I think maybe one time too many, because I did at some point realize I'd been telling the same sort of story about ingesting data and at scale, CD-ROM at scale, appliance at scale. But it was a wonderful run, 3 years. It did get difficult at the end as well, in that we did triple the company, but a lot of competitors came into that marketplace and it got very crowded. Our growth did slow some. So not just to only tell the shiny part of the career, right? It got more competitive. New players came into that space. We had raised a lot of money, and the company was doing very well still, but it was kind of a logical time when I got the phone call on Mimecast.
Yeah.
It was a logical time to say I could hand that off to the next guy after almost 3.5 years. Yeah. And I knew our founder, Peter Bauer, who founded Mimecast, 21 years before I arrived here. I'm the second CEO at a company that's existed 24 years, which is pretty unusual.
Yes.
And I knew Peter, and when Peter and the board called me, Primera, our London-based investors who took us private 4 years ago this May. So when Peter called, I thought, that's something to listen to. And I have to say that I was getting the itch to get back to something bigger. Okay. At Devo, we were in the hundreds of employees. IBM Security was 8,000 employees. LogMeIn was several thousand. So I was sort of feeling like I had a skill set that is, not a lot of people do well at that size. I mean, not a lot of people do well at every scale. But I think when you say, somebody that can do cybersecurity and likes doing it at a scale of thousands of employees, it's unusual. And when it's in Boston and the phone call is from the founder who's ready to hand off to a really great, a great opportunity with great investors, that was pretty tantalizing. And maybe we'll get into it. But I also quickly, in talking to Peter, had a sense that there was a next chapter here that I would be really excited about. Yeah.
So, I mean, I had a bunch of questions here I've written for myself following on for that, but you just put a thought in my mind. So slight diversion. And I promise I'm going to come back to my script, but you've kind of referenced this a few times in terms of a founder handing over to a CEO. And I say this in a very polite way. You are a professional CEO. You're someone who's done repeat CEO, repeat success of growing a business while maintaining the characteristics of a bit like Mimecast is profitable. There are a lot of companies in our industry are not profitable, right? It's a sign of a good business and a well-run business. And you mentioned how you like scaling things. Is that what a professional CEO brings? Is that experience of how to scale a business and keep it growing? Like, what's the difference between that and a founder?
Probably a bald head and gray hair.
Well, I think he's got a great head, just to be clear.
I have immense admiration for founders. And I think we mentioned, you referenced, I did a couple of years as a venture capitalist. And I've acquired by now probably 22 different companies into IBM, into LogMeIn, into Devo, into Mimecast, probably more than 25 actually. And the people I always have the most admiration for when I do an acquisition is the founders, because they're just a unique set.
Absolutely.
Having said that, a lot of them have grown up in the environment that they founded. And many have experiences, but in terms of typically a founder, the biggest job they've had in running a company is the one they're in. And every day that job gets bigger. If they hire one more person, that's the most employees they've managed. Correct. And I think what the professional CEO, the hired gun CEO can do is come in with an experience set of something much bigger, of having done a few of the steps before, of having seen 2 or 3 different iterations, and then bring that experience in with the founder or instead of the founder, depending on how it's set up by the board. So I think it's like bringing someone into your house that you've lived in for 20 years, an interior architect, and saying, what would you do with this room? And you're going to get a pretty different answer than what you've been doing for 20 years in your living room.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. And also, I do think for a founder to acknowledge that they want to bring an outsider in, I think that's also a big sign of maturity of a founder that says we need an expert at this point. Yeah, we're too big.
And we're lucky that Peter, just to make sure that that's clear, is on our board of directors, and I probably talk to him still at least once a month, if not every other week. He's a wonderful partner. So
amazing. Now, the world of cyber is one of those where you say it's rapidly changing, but it seems to be really rapidly changing at the moment. With knowing that, and you've come into this role, what drew you to that mission? And since you've joined, has the vision for the company evolved?
I think I put fuel on probably the vision that Peter had as he handed off.
Yep.
The way I would summarize the vision is that, and I think by now I've been in 20 different cybersecurity magic quadrants. I mean, I did the SIM one 3 times, and I count that only once in my summary. But I've been in IDS, I've been in IAM, PAM, PIM. I mean, the whole alphabet soup of cybersecurity, application security, and all that stuff. And if you look at large cybersecurity companies, they typically do sort of support a layer of the OSI stack, right? The 7 layers of the OSI.
I remember that
you get your network players, you get your endpoint players. It's not exactly how you describe the OSI stack. There's a physical layer I'm skipping over, but application, data, identity, there's kind of a player for every layer of that stack. And at the top of that stack, and that's what I kind of sparked when I was talking to Peter and Premier, our investors, in the interviews. I said, at the top of that stack is this squishy thing called the human. And that human is millimeters away from keyboard and mouse. Yep. And despite your best CrowdStrike and Okta and Sentinel-1 and you name your control at that layer of the OSI stack, the human sits there and he or she is going to screw it all up with just a master stroke of that keyboard and mouse. And as I got to know Mimecast in the interviews and as I got here, you kind of realize that's what we do. Email security is the largest instantiation of human risk. And there are other instantiations as well. And what if we go after that and become that last layer of cybersecurity? And I think that was, to me, like a really exciting moment. I would compare it to the moment when we were at IBM and had this idea of what IBM could mean in the cybersecurity space, the IBM security framework, and this positioning we had there above the firewall and antivirus would exist this new business. And that grew to a very large business, as we've discussed. I had that same spark here when I started thinking about human risk and how important that was in the cyberspace and how uncovered it was as an area.
Okay, no, that's fascinating. And every time we do these conversations, people remind me of all of the things I've forgotten. And OSI model is something I've not thought about in a long time.
I know.
Since my Cisco days and layer 1. But thank you.
I do notice that to some of my younger team members, that whole metaphor with OSI, I say it and then, it's sort of glazed eyes. But for the
you've given me memories of memorizing all the
exactly.
So you kind of touched upon it, but I think the Mimecast story is actually really interesting. You referenced Peter a few times. South African. The company was South African. He brought it to the UK, launched it as a UK business 20 odd years ago. IPO was 9 years ago.
Yeah, that's about right. 2015-ish.
Yeah. And then Premier, you've referenced as well, took the company private 3-4 years ago. You referenced that as well. That's a lot of different steps to go through.
The company was founded in London by South Africans.
By South Afrians. Yeah. Okay. We referenced the revenue. You're getting close to $1 billion, right? So you've been taken private, close to $1 billion. We also know Mimecast has an incredibly loyal, entrenched user base, right? Yes. You have very low churn. People have been with you for a long time now. How do you see Mimecast? Do you see Mimecast as a fast-moving, evolving growth business? Do you see it as something that's become an overall security platform? You mentioned, being a platform for human risk. What is your plan for this business?
I mean, I think it's a business at a pivot, right? I think it's a business that was very focused on email security for, really the first almost 2 decades, and played that hand very well. And I think it's a company that is making a pivot or a resurgence with a tuned mission around human risk, which is broader. I think my three priorities since I've been here as CEO has been to, bring a ton of renewal and innovation into email security, because there was a lot of opportunity to just put more resources there and have a ton of fun. I have a new team that's done that. And then two is expand beyond email security, because our customers were saying what I just said to you in the OSI model. Our customers were saying that to us. Our customers are like, but it's not just an email.
Yeah.
In fact, if you think about it, 28% of an end user's day is spent in email.
Yeah.
So you're like, wow, we have 28% of their day. But it also means we don't have 72% of their day.
Yeah.
So number two for me is expanding that customer promise. And then number three priority was kind of professionalizing the team and the team members and the way we operate so that we could get to $2 billion in revenue, beyond the billion to $2 billion. So those are kind of three priorities. And I think, to answer your question, it's a company that's in an inflection point, and I think a really exciting one with a lot of opportunity.
Perfect. Thank you. And this is why we love having these conversations, just getting an insight into the mind of a CEO and how you think about a business and how you think about the market. I think is fascinating for our viewers. Our viewers are CISOs, they could be students who want to get into the cybersecurity industry, or they could be people and vendors who want to know where they need to go next. What's the right company to work in? With that in mind, I guess let's talk about security itself. You've got a great vantage point, right? You're sitting way above most people in the market and you're seeing everything. What is the biggest security challenge you think that organizations are underestimating at the moment?
It's a very interesting time in cybersecurity. I think, not to get right into AI, but I think with the use of AI on the attacking side, it sort of means that your worst hacker becomes a mediocre hacker, your mediocre hacker becomes a pro, and your pro hacker becomes, state-sponsored like expert, right? So I just think, the ability to hack has never been easier. Hacking as a service is available.
Correct.
There's special LLMs that are focused on writing some of these very sophisticated emails. You're not going to have the Nigerian prince with all the typos,
sadly
right?
Not.
Sadly not. And so I just think that, this is a time when the hacking community can really up its game. I don't think it's like this, like a huge hockey stick like inflection on what they can do, but I think it's a noticeable increase in volume and quality.
Yeah.
We've been here before. I mean, I've been in cybersecurity now 25 plus years. There's always a phase. There was a phase when there was mobile, when there was cloud, then when there was big data. I mean, every one of these phases has, and every time my family says to me, "Whoa, this is an exciting time to be in cybersecurity." I said, "It's been exciting for it's been exciting for a long time." And this, I don't see the AI thing as that much of a discontinuity in the growth of sophistication of hackers, but it definitely allows people to get better fast. And I think it means that companies need to get better fast as well. Yeah. So I think in general, I think the game is getting better, and you need to get better on the defense side very quickly. That's at a high level. And then obviously within that, I see a particular opportunity as a business guy for that eighth layer that we've been, kind of talked about quickly, which is, because maybe in part because I've been in the, the network security, I've been in endpoint security, I've been in application, I've seen all these layers, and you do it all, and still these breaches occur. And it's because 90% of breaches in the end require a human to do something. You don't hack in, you log in through a user. And I think that squishy layer is the one that I think is the one to think about now, because let's face it, a lot of the investment is now getting consolidated into infrastructure-oriented players, Palo Alto and CrowdStrike, even Microsoft. They're taking care of a lot of this stuff and making it quite neat. What about that layer on top?
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to always need to harden around that layer. I agree. And it's interesting you say it's an interesting time to be in cyber. I've definitely seen that shift of, when you have dinner with someone you've never met before, not from the industry. Before they'd say, "What do you do?" You say, "I'm in cybersecurity," and the conversation would drift off and they don't want to talk to you. And now they always say, "I bet it's a good time to be in cyber, or it's an interesting time in cyber." It's definitely, everyone knows about it and has heard about it and actually wants to find out more about it as well. So I think it's spot on there. So we referenced email a few times, and I know you've also said that email is not your focus anymore for Mimecast. It's more than just email. But just if I could do one question around email specifically, there's a lot of trends reports you see around email security, talking about phishing, talking about, business email compromise, or supply chain attacks, whatever it is around the email. What worries you the most on that side of it?
Yeah. And to be very clear, our strategy and that inflection is an email and strategy, not a defocus on email. We, in fact, if anything, I think have doubled our investment in email security innovation. And we did a conference in New York City with about 300-400 customers a few months ago. And it was my biggest pride in that was to show a list of all the email security innovations. Like we have not forgotten our heritage. And it remains, one of the biggest vectors by which hackers, in the end, through that human activity, enter and succeed. But there's a lot going on in email, phishing attacks, business email compromise. One of the ones that we found particularly interesting is QR code attacks. Okay. Those have gotten even more sophisticated. You can do a lot now with AI to make these QR codes. We're seeing QR codes that are being delivered split into two images that meet only in the email. And it's very hard for some of our competitors to detect that because it's two different images. But if you put them together, it's one. We even saw one that was 7 layers of images. And when it arrived in the email, those images come together, and only when those 7 images come together. So we have now really, we're always very good in the QR code detection, but now have done things where we, when in doubt, we render the entire email and make sure we understand what's there. You can look at things now, right? And that's the nice thing. I think QR code attacks are on the rise. I actually just got out of one of our larger customers here in London, and we did you were talking about that 1.5, 1.7 billion emails a day that we're doing. And it was funny just to talk to them about their portion of that, which is, hundreds of thousands of emails that we're blocking on a monthly basis, on a daily basis for this customer. And one of the big categories that had spiked for them that we're blocking, so good there, but is the QR code attacks. And they're often getting into business email compromise scenarios. Yeah.
It's funny, we do events quite often for our clients or prospects, and we always like to make them interactive and have polls. And so we always flash up a QR code saying, please scan this QR code and you can vote for what do you think is. And you can just see the faces of all these cybersecurity professionals going, I don't really want to scan this QR code. I don't know what's going to
Well, our chief product officer was doing a presentation about a particularly bad QR code that we had found, and was shocked to see a couple of security people trying to take a picture of it. He started to put a stripe through that QR code because it actually was linked to malware. So,
exactly. Yeah, you got to be careful. Next question. I don't really like asking this type of question, but I find anytime you see an interview these days, everyone just starts the interview with, what's going on with AI? Like it's a lazy question for me, but in the position you are in, I think you can give us real kind of insight in this. We are seeing a rise in AI-powered attacks. You mentioned about emails are no longer the Nigerian pins. They're polymorphic and designed for you in your language, all the rest of it. There's LLM-driven, just general kind of social engineering. How does Mimecast, what do you guys think about AI, and what are you doing to basically fight back against it as an attack?
When I mentioned the list of innovations and deliverables that we've done in email security specifically, it is a lot of that is helped by AI. First of all, obviously our development teams are using Cursor and Claude and all these tools to build.
Amazing.
I mean, I've never seen a velocity of innovation as I'm seeing now by our team. A, because they're a great group of people, and B, because they're using AI to build, right? So the velocity is so fast. In fact, the customer I was just asked for a feature that, our reaction was, you'll have that in a few weeks. And that's just answers that you can give because you're using AI to develop these things. And then we layered in AI into about a dozen of we have this sort of, actually, it's kind of a tube metro map of all the points that we check these things, the email along the path, those 1.7 billion email a day that come to us. And probably about a dozen of those points, there's about 30 of them where we're doing different checks, sandboxing and spam and malware and URL and QR code. We have engines for everything. We've added AI into a whole bunch of those. We've added a whole new engine called Business Email Compromise, which is an entirely AI-based engine that actually reads the emails, the ones that make it through there. We read it and we say, that's a finance email with urgency, and it's telling you to move to WhatsApp. 3 signals, that's business email compromise. And we put a final full stop engine at the end that does a correlation across everything leveraging AI, which you call our multi-vector threat detection. So that's just an email. building with AI, putting AI in the engines, building AI engines in AI native engines. The other thing is acquisition of this product, Code 42 Incydr, right? So Incydr, it is selling like hotcakes, and the value prop is pretty simple. Would you like to detect shadow use of AI in your organization?
Which is everywhere.
Everywhere, right? The week of DeepSeek, we had one of the biggest professional services firms in the world. We immediately were seeing, our engineers were seeing that some of their professional services team members were uploading customer documents into DeepSeek. Could DeepSeek help me summarize this PowerPoint of highly confidential data going into an engine powered out of China? Right? Alerts went off there. But it's not just, are you using unsanctioned AI? The second is, what are you uploading? So what Incydr is an insider threat or DLP solution, modern DLP solution. So even if you have is sanctioned AI, you may have a policy that says you can use the AI, but we do not want actual customer data, being uploaded there. You can also detect what's being uploaded, and is that sanctioned? So, and it detects everything else, source code. I mean, the thing that people do with company data is remarkable. When someone makes something, a piece of source code, they move it to their personal GitHub repository because they want to save that for later. Right?
I'm really proud of that. I want to reuse that and show people.
You're doing that, or you're?
No. You haven't seen me code. There's nothing to be proud of with my code. I can tell you that much.
No, but just the leakage that happens. It's a natural human instinct. I made this beautiful thing for marketing, for engineering or whatever, and I'm going to keep a copy for later, or even just to show off. So Incydr detects that. Incydr detects usage of AI. Incydr is using AI to detect all that. So there's a couple of examples there. And then maybe the last thing is, I'll talk about a very boring part of our portfolio, which is the email archive, right? You mentioned at the beginning, we're known for our archive. Well, we've extended through an acquisition of this company, Aware, in Columbus, Ohio. By the way, our Code 42 colleagues are in Minneapolis. So we've had an interesting couple of weeks with our wonderful teammates in Minneapolis. That office is closed this week. But we, with the Aware acquisition at Columbus, Ohio, have been able to layer AI sentiment and search onto the email archive and add Teams, Slack, and Zoom. Right. So now, instead of the way our email archive worked before, is a Boolean-based, this person on that day, in a couple of words. Now you can say, did anybody do something yesterday that violated my acceptable use policy, which I'm uploading here? So a much more sophisticated way of searching through the archive, in addition to the Boolean search capability.
That's amazing.
There's a lot of AI usage with AI, for AI, by AI happening in our portfolio. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, the speed that the hackers are moving at, you have to also move at the speed. This is the world we live in now. You can't just sit there and rest on your laurels. You have to be innovating constantly. By the way, we use Incydr actually at Saepio as well, and I remember we saw a demo with a client we were doing, and they said, "Can I see who is going to ChatGPT and uploading their CV, their resume, and asking it to clean it up?"
Yeah.
So there's other use cases for it as well, in terms of you can see who's a risk of moving jobs as well. It detects everything now. It's amazing what the tool does. Yeah.
I mean, you get into maybe just taking it back up a step, defining human risk. It is mistakes. It is them being owned by a hacker, and it's them being malicious, right?
Absolutely.
And all three of those scenarios, and I would say, most of them are mistakes. Sometimes they get owned, and sometimes they're malicious. The malicious ones are extremely difficult, right? If someone says, "Hey, completely. I am going to quit," right, and I already have a new job. So let me start taking some data. Right? I mean, these are it could be a hacktivist. It could be an internal activist, right? Wants to sabotage your business because they're upset about something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, on that theme, if there is a breach, and what happens? It's ransomware. There's data extortion. That's the kind of end result ultimately, but that's how they're going to monetize it. We know these campaigns are highly targeted. I'm not asking you to speak about specific incidents. You would never do that. That's confidential. But what lessons have you seen from these recent incidents that Mimecast has kind of prevented or come in afterwards that a CISO who's watching right now could take to heart and learn from?
Well, I think there's maybe two, right? One is, I think that even our mighty platform that we've expanded needs to be part of the ecosystem of capabilities. And so we're very proud of our integrations with CrowdStrike, Okta, SentinelOne, and many, many others, Zscaler, Netscope. I think that makes a huge difference. As you said, if a breach does occur, if something happens, you want to make sure that, this data is available in your Splunk instance. It's integrating it with CrowdStrike. You're feeding these things and able to detect more or be able to react. And that's the second part is obviously there's left a boom, there's right a boom. When the boom occurs, have a response plan. And I think part of that is making sure that something like Mimecast is fully integrated so that your response plan can react much faster. But then obviously there's lots of parts to it, a response plan in terms of having the right team available, the right procedures, a Mandiant or some of these types of incident response providers at your avail. So be ready for when the shit hits the fan.
It's interesting you mentioned incident plan. I was talking to a customer, I think it was 2 days ago, and one of the things that we're going through the checklist is, and remember, your incident plan should be printed and physically stored somewhere, because your incident plan might be on SharePoint and then SharePoint's been taken down. It's great you've got a plan, but it has to be accessible as well.
I've been in the business long enough from when Maersk got hit by WannaCry back, now 12, 15 years ago. But they couldn't email, they couldn't use their computers.
Exactly.
They relied mostly on spontaneously on WhatsApp. I think there's a lot of lessons coming out of that Maersk. They did a great job, by the way, mission oriented. They had a commander's intent was very clear with Maersk, right? The CEO very quickly said, do what's right for the customer, and we'll figure out the rest later. So good in commander's intent made up for a lot of probably, no one could have prepared for what happened there. I think it was a bit of a first of a kind. I think now we're all preparing much more like that.
100%.
Yeah.
We did a tabletop ourselves last week.
Good.
You have to be. So I kind of last question I asked, what should CISOs take to heart? What can they learn from you? Staying on that tact, we've mentioned it now. You've been a CEO multiple times. I think afterwards your PR team told me you're going to go be meeting your investors. You're dealing at that boardroom level. You understand that better than 99% of the people who are going to be watching this episode. We all know in cybersecurity, we're not the best at communicating necessarily, especially not communicating upwards. How can CISOs better communicate cyber risks in business terms to those executives or board members that they ultimately need to sponsor them?
Yeah, I think use business terms. It's been wonderful for me. We had our CISO retire about 9 months ago, brought in a new CISO, and it was an opportunity for he and I to sit down and really give another fresh look at that part of the business. And I what I love, and he did it without me asking, I just love at the business level, likelihood of impact and, and level of impact and likelihood, right? Just a very simple graphic. And he had that same methodology. Likelihood and impact is the two probabilities you want to plot. And he took, probably 3 dozen different risks that he had identified in his first 90 to 120 days and mapped it in that. And I think likelihood and impact is a language. It's interesting. My wife is a consultant in ESG.
Right.
And there they also, I was talking to her the other day about, weather situations and flooding and, the world getting warmer and all these things that ESG consultants think of. And she said, we think about it like likelihood and impact. I said, me too, right? Yeah. I think that is a language that a bank board, an insurance board, any business person can understand. So I think getting the events into this is the likelihood it's going to happen and this is the impact of it. And then taking, instead of saying it's a 0-day vulnerability, blah, 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 explain it in English, those things that you plot on there in terms that they would understand.
Assume people know what actually translate it into I love that, likelihood and impact.
Likelihood and impact. Boards, everybody who has ever taken out an insurance policy in their life, which is pretty much every adult on the planet, understands risk.
Yeah.
And so if you can bring security into a simple business risk terms with likelihood and impact and keep the terms a bit simple. The issue we have in cybersecurity, and we don't like to admit that, is we love confusing people. We love being the smartest in the room, right? Even at the cocktail party, you just say, you wouldn't understand the latest APTs, right?
Yeah.
And you go to a board and talk APTs and 0 days and CVEs. They have no idea what you're talking about. And some of us love it, right? Because it's makes us feel fantastic that we've befuddled everybody. If you really want to make an impact, you got to scrap all that. Speak English, speak risk, and you'll get the board on your side.
Makes sense. And I mean, you referencing that That's also how ESG see it. Well, cyber's part of ESG, right? Most companies, when they look at an ESG score, having cybersecurity at a certain level is part of, so it makes sense why that would resonate across both of those. Sticking on this theme, again, you talk to a lot of board. I'm sure your schedule is tightly scheduled and you're meeting clients all day and all the rest of it. When you meet with clients, when you meet with boards, what resonates most with people at that level? Is it talking about compliance? Is it financial impact? Is it about being more resilient? Like what was the most resonating that you see?
It's funny. I used to say that there were three main motivators of cybersecurity spending, and I'm now going back 25 years. I would say that I think when I first entered the market, there was a big Dow Chemical insider, and so everybody's talking about Incydr. And then after that, we had the first wave of very sophisticated hackers. And then we had Sarbanes-Oxley, and it was compliance. And I feel like you could almost do a sine, cosine kind of waves of those 2, 3, or 4 terms. Maybe a fourth term would be technology, the cloud era. And all of a sudden that sort of, it wasn't a hacker, it wasn't a compliance, it wasn't an insider. It was all of a sudden a discontinuity in cloud, mobile, big data, AI, right? So I think these things sort of, I guess they're kind of, those are the 3 or 4 themes. They've been tried and true for 25 years that I've been in the space. To me, I think the key is knowing your audience before you get there, and what really motivates them. I just came out of a meeting with a financial services company, and I was well briefed. I knew they were worried about attacks, hackers. That's their hackers and a bit of compliance, but mostly hackers was their thing. So you talk about that. You go talk to a biotech company, and it may be insider risk and intellectual property, and you just got to know your audience. But it's going to be, there are only 3 or 4 reasons why people buy cybersecurity. It's not that complex. It's one of those 3 or 4.
And just understand your audience. Maybe ask them what's most important to them, and then talk in those terms.
Exactly.
Makes perfect sense. Okay, great.
Likelihood and impact.
I was going to say that. Absolutely. Okay, I mean, same kind of topic. Where do you see the responsibility for cyber risk sitting? Is it with a CISO? Is it with like the IT and the CIO side? Is it with a risk officer? Is it with the CEO? Is it the board? Where do you think cyber risk sits?
When I was at IBM, we had a 20-person cab, and I remember, and this is not that long ago, 7 years ago, saying, how many of you report to the CIO versus elsewhere? And it was 17 out of 20 reported to the CIO.
Yeah.
And we had a big discussion about it then, and I think it's still relevant, which is that, in theory, you shouldn't report to the CIO because there's a conflict of interest there, because the CIO wants to have things on time and on budget, and maybe we'll cut the corner on cyber. In practice, they actually liked reporting to the CIO because you have a seat at the table of 90% of the CISO-oriented decisions being made. And so if you're on the CIO's staff, you're at the table, as opposed to being in risk or in operations or in finance. And then you keep having to go over there and saying, hey, Mr. CIO, do you mind patching some stuff? Do you mind stopping with rolling out risky software?
Can you help me?
Exactly. So I think I think practically being under the CIO and having the CIO responsible at a cybersecurity company, the CISO sits under me. I think that's probably quite common at a cybersecurity company. It pops up to the CEO. But the truth is, not many CISOs report to the CEO, and not many CEOs would be good at managing a CISO. I think in cybersecurity,
slightly different,
a little different. So I think CIO is good, but in most banks, it reports into a risk function, or as a heavy dotted line into a risk function. So I think the most important thing is that you have a seat at the IT table, one way or the other, because at the end of the day, otherwise you're in the ivory tower hoping for better, as opposed to making the changes needed.
Yeah, and you can advise, but someone needs to implement as well. You need to be on the same table. Okay, I'm just going to bring you back to Mimecast, but talking about the market. So one thing I always say to people when they talk to me about where do you see the world going is that we have this constant wave in technology of consolidation and platforms. And then niche, startups break out, best of breed niches, and then they do really well. Then they want to become platforms because that's how you grow. You can only get a certain size with a niche, right? Where looking ahead, as a CEO, you are literally paid to look ahead. 3 years, 5 years. I'm not sure what kind of plan you have here at Mimecast. Where do you see us in that kind of consolidation to platform or niche breakout part of the cycle in tech?
I think at an industry level, that has been fascinating. I would say I have sort of seen three waves of platform, right? When I got into the industry, the platforms were the antivirus and the firewall guys. I think as we built up IBM security, there was a phase there where HP had quite a large business where you had players like a Splunk rising up and aggregating a bunch of capability, and several other players were starting to rise up in that time. That was sort of a second platform phase, and then the third one I think is right now, and clearly Palo Alto, CrowdStrike. You have to give Microsoft credit, right? It's assembling a lot of capabilities in this area. People are standardizing on Microsoft. They do adopt a bunch of their technology. And then I think there are players like Mimecast that is also building a platform in its area. And I don't want to have too much hubris on us versus a Microsoft, but we have a platform in human risk. And I think part of the center of our platform is that human risk score, right? And we have this huge passion about bringing the data together to understand the 8% of users that cause 80% of damage, and then having the awareness training to change the behavior, and having the control set in email, collaboration, and elsewhere inside a risk to be able to control that behavior. I think that is our platform play in this human risk area. And it luckily complements the platforms from the more infrastructure-oriented players like Palo Alto and CrowdStrike.
Okay. That's fascinating. Thank you.
But by the way, it probably will break up. I mean, there has never been a massive cybersecurity company. I mean, if you look at what Palo and CrowdStrike are doing, and I admire what they're doing, there has never been an example of 10 years of excellence at that scale. They typically end up focusing on EBITDA and shareholders, as opposed to hackers, and then get sloppy and get second and third best in their spaces. And then it breaks up again. Now, these companies are led by fantastic leaders. We're going to do our part on our platform to stay very innovative. But, if you look at the past, you would say at some point it fragments before it comes back together. We'll see.
Well, I mean, I personally think cyber has a very unique set of scenarios around it. You've got attack vectors, which seem to be rolling out far more frequently than they used to. The shift from a desktop to a laptop took a long time. Now every year we've got some new technology that needs to be secured or secured against. Because of that, I think you have a lot of niche players who can't get to scale. So they can't hire big sales teams. They need partners around them. And then as a buyer, you want to keep up to date with the latest threats. There's so many solutions out there. How do you even decide which one to do? So I think just the characteristics of all of those things lead it to be a fragmented market. And even if you become the platform, like you say, like what Palo and CrowdStrike are achieving, just by nature of the attack vector, which you don't get in an SAP kind of, I need to change my finance system every 20 years. You just don't have that threat coming. Maybe with AI you do. But I think we are going to see constant niches. But it's interesting to see your view on platform, and also where Mimecast sits with there. If I could do just one, I've got one tough question here to kind of end around your career. You've been here for 2 years now. What's the toughest decision you've had to make as the CEO of Mimecast?
I think upgrading key leaders and key roles is always the toughest decision. I never do that. And I think, as I said, as we started thinking about approaching $1 billion and then going from there to $2 billion, you start to want to look at roles. And so we've done some changes there. And I love the team that we have here. I love the team that was here when I got here. But I think for our next chapter, we needed to make some changes. And I think when you sit down with someone, I love what the CEO of NVIDIA says, torture people to success, right? And I do a lot of success torturing myself. I sit down with team members and say, this is what I need from you. I think we're so sloppy as a younger version of myself, I was so sloppy on, daring to give that feedback. What if they quit? What if I tell them, I'm not happy with this and they quit, right? And I think at some point you realize, okay, that's exactly what a person wants in order to stay, is to get that brutally honest feedback from their boss.
Absolutely.
And so I try and do that. I try and also take feedback as much as possible, and as much as that is possible as a CEO. And to torture them to success. But I think when you then get to the point where you realize, no, like for this, we need to go to somebody with a different capability set. Those are tough conversations, but but then you see the team come together, and it's wonderful. So yeah,
I think your advice applies to anyone, whether they're just a manager of a small team or
it is
or a leader. I think that's applicable to anyone in that kind of situation. I've referenced a few times our audience. We have a lot of cyber professionals who watch this. This is a tough world. People always say to me, "Do you want your kids to go into cyber?" I've got 3 girls, and I always say no. Because it's a goalkeeper job. You don't win a game, but if you make a mistake, you can lose a game. So you've got to really love this space, because no one's going to high five you for nothing happened today. They're going to expect it.
Yeah,
it's tough in that way. It's a 24/7 job, right? Christmas is not a downtime. Hackers love Christmas.
Yeah,
they deliberately go hard around holiday periods because they're thinking people are not going to be around. People are going to be sloppy, human risk, like you said, that kind of thing. So with all those things, we know that security leaders are in a high pressure role. There's and burnout is a real risk. CEO is and you're a CEO of cyber. So not only, you're a CEO, a 24/7 role, you're a 24/7 industry as well. And you've done this 3 times now. What is your secret to not burning out? I mean, you look fresh as a daisy to me. You got a great haircut. You're sitting here smiling. How have you not burnt out?
Well, I think, listen, I think you have to just put borders down. When I was coming up the ranks, as it was at IBM, and we started having also 3 children ourselves, at some point, it was actually my wife who said to me, "Hey, at the time I was doing a lot of phone calls into Asia Pacific, and I was, some of those were just very late." And she said, "Listen, that's all well and good, but we have 2, 3 babies, can you just block from 6 to 8? Because that's when they, need to be fed and put to bed." And my wife has a career as well. So that's the kind of on time. And she said, if you have calls from 8 to midnight, I don't care, but 6 to 8, right? And so I think that to me was like a chat that we had many, many years ago, because my oldest is now 18, first year in college. My youngest is 14. Thank you. And so that was many years ago. And I think it was a kind of little wake up call of, you know what, I can control my own destiny. I have an admin. As a CEO, the good thing about a CEO is, you are the boss. Your calendar takes precedence. You have an admin. And so sometimes you need to just block from 6 to 8 if that's what's needed, or the weekends or whatever. So I really do try and block and be balanced. And the other thing I learned as a CEO is, if you're emailing everybody Saturday and Sunday with unnecessarily stuff, I mean, it's one thing, we've had an incident, we've had a breach, we've had a customer problem, et cetera. There's a big conference coming up, RSA conference. Weekend work is there. I get it. But, I had a boss one time who was kind of an empty nester and would just wake up on Saturday morning and just clean out his inbox. And it would ruin my Saturday and Sunday, because half those emails were ending up as actions to me. And I remember, and
you don't want to be unresponsive. You want to show
exactly. So I vowed. By the way, I did end up confronting that boss, and he immediately changed his behavior. He said, "I didn't realize it." I've always tried not to be that person. I send an email on the weekend or a Slack or whatever. It's going to be because it's important, and there is a timer, right? Sometimes you can clear out your inbox and just say, "Deliver all the stuff on Monday morning."
Absolutely,
it's also fine. So
absolutely, we do the same thing. My wife and I, we both work, and literally 6 to 8. And I mean, we've got some of our Saepio team here, but behind these bright lights, and I don't think anyone's ever seen me in the office, at 6 o'clock. I go home. I want to see the kids, and then I'm happy to work as long as you want me to do, but I want to do it from home.
Exactly.
After I've seen the kids and put them to bed, that kind of thing. Also, side question, you said your eldest is 18 going to college. Are they pursuing a cyber career or something different?
I don't think I see a cyber career yet. In my middle and youngest is, but my oldest is studying biochemistry.
Okay. They're wise enough to stay away from this.
I think cyber has the downsides you said, but I think the cool thing, if you're going to go into software, I always say that what I love about cyber and any software, but it makes it hard. In any software space, you have competitors and customers, and in cyber, you have competitor, customers, and hackers.
Yes.
It's this third, stochastic variable that you need to deal with. And I think that makes it really fresh and exciting. So
it's definitely exciting.
It's definitely exciting.
It's just full on.
Full on.
I guess final question. We have a lot of people who watch this who are, let's say, early or mid in their career, and they would love to be a leader. Someone like you would be aspirational to them career-wise, but they don't want to be a founder. They don't want to start and have their own idea and all the rest of it. They want to be in a corporate world, but work their way up to be leader. What advice do you have to people who are ambitious, who want to climb up to the top, but don't get exposure to a CEO and can't say to them, what should I do? What are good habits? Like, what advice would you have?
I think the first to me is, as I think about moving up in that time in IBM, the thing that I consciously and subconsciously did was focus on product and customer.
Yeah.
I think there is a lot of people, I see that sometimes I spend some time in marketing, and sometimes I have marketing people say, well, I don't know the product well enough. It's like, well, how hard is it? Like, go learn how to do a demo. Like, I can demo most of our products, and I'm just a dumb CEO. So if you're like, an event marketing person or whatever, learn how to demo the product, right? And learn how customers use it, and learn how to engage with customers. Stand at the booth and just ask a customer, how are you using the product, right? So product, customer. If you master both of those and the interaction of the two, ideally, you are so much more valuable to a company than somebody who just says, I'm really good at, content marketing, but I never really bothered learning the customer or the product. So I think that's one piece. And then I think people rising up in the corporate world in a function, the thing that you need to know as a CEO, which I did an MBA and that helps, you need to be able to look at the whole company. And there aren't a lot of jobs where you can be whole company oriented, because many functions, you're the PR person, you're the salesperson, you're the BDR, you're the engineer, you're the product manager, you're the finance person. And so I would say just look for project opportunities where you can look at the whole company, whether it's volunteer for a project around a transformation of the company, around an acquisition is ideal, because in acquisitions, you always have to look at it, or get yourself into a line of work. I did 3 years of being a venture capitalist, where I was looking at, 20, 30 business plans a week of people sending us business plans, wanting funding. And you start to really see patterns. Oh, that one's got a bad management team. That one doesn't have any customers. That one, the guy's never built a product before. That one's running out of cash. And you start to see patterns of behavior. So I think, get to know the entire company in one way, shape or the other, through a special project or some engagement or mentorship or secondment. Sometimes you can do that as well. You need to know many functions to, in the end, run the company or do an MBA. It's a shortcut.
Yeah, I mean, we always say to our management team that our job is allocation of capital. And if you come to me and say, I want £10 to invest in this, I have to compare it to £10 investing in anything else. And why is that the right place to put that money? We're a growth business, so we're constantly investing in our business, but it's the best use of that capital. So very, very wise words. Marc, I've taken up a lot of your time. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experience with our audience, and also hosting us in this beautiful venue as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Great to chat.
Very nice.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.